Tomorrow afternoon, President Obama will visit a New York City firehouse, lay a wreath at the 9/11 memorial, and then meet privately with approximately 50 family members who lost loved ones in the attack 10 years ago. It will be the first time he has visited Ground Zero as president. President Obama invited President George W. Bush to attend the ceremony, but President Bush declined the invitation. His spokesperson said he appreciated the invite, but has chosen in his post-presidency to remain largely out of the spotlight. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said the invitation was extended in the spirit of post-9/11 unity.
This is a moment of unity for Americans and a moment to recall the unity that existed in this country in the wake of the attacks on 9/11. And he wanted to he invited President Bush because he had hoped that if President Bush were able to come, that he would join the president in visiting the World Trade Center site. We completely understand that he's not able to come.
Joining me now is Howard Fineman, MSNBC political analyst and editorial director of the Huffington Post. Thanks for joining me tonight, Howard.
Hi, Lawrence.
Howard, you know George W. Bush as well as any journalist could possibly know him. What do you make of his declining the invitation to come to Ground Zero?
Well, first of all, on a personal basis, I think it's true. He's largely stayed out of the political spotlight. I have to say, having covered his entire presidency, that this was a guy who at best had a very mixed attitude toward politics and toward the limelight. So you have to give him some credit or at least some understanding for that. But beyond that, talking to Republicans and Democrats, you get two very different views. Republicans I talked to said, hey, he doesn't really think it's a great idea to validate what the president is going to do by way of a victory lap up there, by way of expressing the fact that he had gotten Osama bin Laden. You talk to Democrats, and what they say is George W. Bush doesn't want to be there because he didn't catch Osama bin Laden, and because after having said initially that he wanted Osama bin Laden dead or alive, the president, not long thereafter, President Bush, not long thereafter, seemed to let go of the trail, said publicly, I don't really care that much about where he is anymore, and seemed to have dropped the ball. So depending on how you view it, in terms of partisanship, I think those are the two answers. But I think, knowing him, he wanted to just stay away so as not to bring more controversy to himself. He'd had enough of it during his tenure.
So he, I guess, is content to let others argue that he deserves some credit or half credit, or in Fox News case, 100% credit for the capture of Osama bin Laden, and while he deserves absolutely no blame for the current economy, of course.
That's right.
And so that's the better play for him, is staying. Is there just a kind of old-fashioned Bush Yankee family modesty about this is someone else's moment, and I don't want to take the stage?
Yes, I think to some extent that's probably the case. George W. Bush had a very mixed attitude toward a lot of the pageantry and game playing of politics. He hired other people to do that, Lawrence. He hired some of the best and the toughest and most cold-blooded in the business, whether it was Dick Cheney in foreign policy or Karl Rove in domestic politics. But George W. Bush always satisfied himself, or told himself, that it was other people who were doing that. And as for him personally, if he had his druthers, he'd stay away from it. His father was very much like that, and George W. was a little bit like that, too. He just as soon let the others argue and avoid both another pageantry of praise or a pageantry of blame.
Are there any other controversial invitations the president might be issuing to this event? Who else is he bringing in for this?
Well, my understanding from talking to White House officials tonight is that they did invite former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, and the mayor accepted. So the word as of a couple of hours ago is that Mayor Giuliani will be there. I think that's the key one. There was also some talk of perhaps President Clinton coming, but I think once George Bush said no, I think the White House decided not to make it a pageant of the presidents in any sense, but to just keep it to President Obama talking in a careful and considerate and compassionate way to families of survivors of 9/11.
And what does the president have to do tomorrow to make sure this doesn't have any campaign overtone to it?
Just talk to the survivors. Just talk to the families. Don't make a big speech. Keep it low key. Just show that he's paying respects to the memory of the people who died at 9/11. There weren't a lot of arguments, Lawrence, about who was armed and who was unarmed at the moment in the World Trade Center building when those airplanes hit. And he's paying respect to the people who were victims there and whose families are grieving still. I think if he makes it almost a sort of quasi-religious moment, a moment when the American people can think back over the last decade, I think that'll be a service to the whole country, not necessarily to himself.
Howard Fineman of MSNBC and the Huffington Post, thanks for joining us tonight, Howard.
Thank you, Lawrence.